16%. They had a beat on the top line, a beat on the bottom line, strong guidance for full year 2025 free cash flow better than expected as well. It's a stock that has divided analysts, even as it soared nearly 400% in the past 12 months. Only 3 analysts have buy ratings. We have one of them with us here today, Dan Ives, Wedbush Global Head of Technology Research. He has an outperform and a street high $90 price target. On the other side of this debate, though, is Brent Thill. He's tech sector lead at Jefferies. He has an underperform on Palantir and a $28 price target. It's good to have you both here. And Brent, I'm actually going to start with you because in the shareholder letter that Alex Karp puts out every quarter, he basically called this a new phase as AI adoption accelerates and with it sales growth, which is what we're seeing at Palantir. And I spoke to Karp and he said it to me like this. He said, quote, say you're a PE company, you acquire a large insurance company and you wanted to change the cost of revenue, meaning how can you have fewer people doing the same amount of underwriting and have the same number of customers? That was a multi-year project, like 3 to 5. Now it's a 1-quarter cost that's completely different. And if you do it and the company down the street doesn't, you're going to have very different margins and very different revenue. And then he goes on from there. But we've talked about it for a while now that 2025 could be the year where you see this application layer actually take effect and you see corporate America begin to realize the benefits of the investments they've made on AI. Palantir seems to be very far ahead based on the earnings we just got. Does this change your thesis?
Look, they've had great fundamentals. I think this is a question of valuation. Again, you'd have to grow 5 years in a row at 50% and stock would still trade at 15 times revenue. So it's not that we're arguing the fundamentals. Kudos to them and great call by Dan on the stock. Our view is more about liking other names. And remember, 50% of this base is retail and insiders. There's no other software company like this. It's the lowest asked about question of any institutional investor because barely any institutional investors own it. And so I go back to, we've all seen what happened to Snowflake at 50 times revenue. We've all seen what happened to Datadog and others. And maybe Palantir is different. Kudos to them. And I agree with you. It's getting to the application layer and they're in a great spot. So I'm not sitting here attacking the fundamentals. The fundamentals are great. Ours is largely focused on the stock and looking at what's happened to investors in the last 20 years. When you chase things at 50 times revenue, it doesn't end well. And none of them have. So okay. I think part of it's we're just scarred from that. And maybe we're totally wrong on that. And so I acknowledge, we're wrong. But I also acknowledge, like, you got to look at the history and look at the fundamental analysis. So that's kind of what we're sticking to right now.
Dan, I want to get your response to that because valuation has been raised by a number of folks here. One of the other things that came up in my conversation with Karp is the fact that, this is how he put it, he said we don't have the right jokes, the right suits, the right steak dinners. We're never exactly the right people at the right time, unfortunately, and that's probably the biggest limit to our growth. Wrong people, wrong time, but right products. Yep. Sort of getting at this idea that they tend to be contrarian and that they don't have a marketing team, and yet they're growing. You've called it the Messi of AI, but the Messi of AI does look expensive based on some valuation metrics. Is it right for a pullback here, or does it keep going?
Look, I think this was a historical quarter. And ultimately, look, the bears, they were bearish at $10, hated 40, and despised it at 100, right? And I think they can see AI in the spreadsheets. When we do the checks that we've done for Palantir, I think it's the next Oracle, it's the next Salesforce. I think this is a company, when it comes to AI revolution, this is really front and center is what's going to be one of the huge beneficiaries there.
Do they need to pull the marketing lever here? Do they need to build out that team, or it's not necessary?
I think the scary thing is, with no direct sales force and basically more inbound, this is what they've done. In terms of what these types of numbers, you start to look out the next 3, 4, 5 years. I think this is ultimately, this could be a $1 trillion market cap when we look out for the next 2, 3, 4 years. And as Brett's talked about, institutional has obviously been very negative on it. But as we've talked, I think many have missed the biggest historical growth names the last 20 years.